This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benerofe, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world, and all you polluters out there. We know who you are. John Bailey, the Citizen Net reporter, with Jim Benerofe, the Dean of Journalism in White Plains, and the anchor for all seasons, Peter Katz. And Jim Benerofe has the headlines. You got this.
Here are the stories for the week of February 3rd, 2017. Councilwoman Milagro Lecuona announces she will run for mayor, accuses administration of failure to plan, no transparency, and not listening to the people. 434-unit apartment complex proposed for East Post Road and Mamaroneck Avenue. AT&T building at 440 Hamilton Avenue to be converted to apartments. Mount Zion AME Church proposes senior living facility. Roundup of planned developments shows over 3,500 new rental apartments to be built. Common Council set to approve 3-year settlement for the Civil Service Employees Association. 2 fires, a small one in White Plains and a huge fire in Yonkers. Peter Katz will have our new weekly feature, Trump the President. William McMahon, former White Plains Fire Chief, passes away at 93.
Thank you, Jim. And right now we go right away to the White Plains Week Rolo Newsreel March of Time, and Milagro Lecuona had an announcement to make with her family and all her supporters. And Peter, you have the story.
Well, Councilwoman Milagro Lecuona wants to be the Democratic Party's candidate for mayor of White Plains. The Democratic City Committee gets to select the candidate of its choice for the Democratic Party line on the ballot, and conventional wisdom would expect the party to pick incumbent Mayor Tom Roach. Lecuona would then be faced with the prospect of having to run against Roach in a primary, getting on some other party's line on the ballot, staging a write-in campaign, or ending her campaign. The city committee is expected to select its candidate in May. If there is a party primary, it's usually in September. Councilwoman Lecuona's backers gathered in front of Democratic Party headquarters on East Post Road in White Plains for her January 29th announcement. She was introduced by Michael Sanchez, a White Plains resident who is a social studies teacher at the Highlands Middle School.
She shares a vision on how we can make the city a place that people want to stay in and move to. She is a fighter. She fights for solutions and initiatives that are effective, fair, and inclusive for all of us. Milagros' heart is full of empathy and wants all residents to have a sense of community, a voice that will be heard and acknowledged, and a sentiment that their needs are being met. She is honest, hardworking, and encompasses a high level of integrity, knowledge, and vision.
I am here today surrounded by family members, friends, and supporters to officially announce my candidacy for mayor for this wonderful city of White Plains. The reason I have decided to take this extraordinary step is because of the course of 9 years in the Common Council. I have been, as a Common Council member, I have seen many problems in the city, specifically under the current administration. I am talking about the mismanagement of city affairs, complete lack of transparency, lack of vision for the future of our city, and poor judgment in moving all of us forward in an increasingly competitive county environment. This community, our community, is had enough. Our city depends heavily on sales taxes, and we simply cannot survive like this. What is the current administration doing? What are their vision to revitalize and energize our downtown? Have they addressed all these issues? No. They may say so, but this street is a real example that they haven't. Our very own business improvement district has complained for years that the aggressive parking enforcement is having a significant negative effect and keeps customers away from our city. Why are neighboring towns smarter than us on this? We need to keep the density in downtown, on Main Street, on Mamaroneck Avenue, near the train station. We need to keep traffic out of small neighborhoods to keep the streets safe for our children. Our citizens are purposely kept in the dark, and I wonder why. Even worse, city commissioners are arbitrarily instructed not to talk to specific common council members, although we have all been democratically elected, and we all represent all the citizens of White Plains. Further, the limited information we receive is filtered, manipulated, or delayed. There is no transparency whatsoever, not even for those dedicated to working within our city. And as a result, our neighborhoods suffer. We are ready for change.
Well, she has her work cut out for her.
Yes, try it. In fact, some of her points about transparency were proven on Tuesday when Jim Benerofe and no, was it Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday.
Yes, it was a special council meeting.
Right, exactly. And
which was not televised.
No, it was not.
Well, the problem that I have mostly with transparency is I think that the city is relying heavily on its website for getting information out there. And they sort of expect everybody to go to the website for everything, and you can't do that. They've got to put out some press releases and put out information. And I think that's a major flaw. And it's not only true of White Plains, it's other places too.
Yeah,
but there's way too much reliance on the internet and computers and not enough. You need PR people.
And they have to be more timely.
Well, the one focus of what Milagros was saying was that they're not talking to the common council people. Council people are being kept in the dark, she says.
They're keeping the press in the dark a little bit too.
Yeah.
Yes, we're
but
a
anyways,
mushroom.
But they did have a special council meeting on Tuesday, and you were there.
For the shocker of the week.
Which was this.
Yes.
This would be the new look on Mamaroneck Avenue if the project which was unveiled actually goes forward.
Tell us all about it.
All right, well, they're proposing to build, and there's actually, if I recall it correctly, you see one building there, that's the major piece of the project that's faces on Mamaroneck Avenue and East Post Road.
Now, what they're talking about is a parcel that's been assembled which sort of snakes its way from Mitchell Place up to East Post Road.
Plus.
Yeah. Well, they're not. From what I recall of the rendering, it's very hard to discuss this without having the actual renderings in front of you because it is, well, snaking it through the area is a pretty good description.
Now, like if you look at this illustration, and we do apologize for the quality of it, but originals were not released to the news media, at least not to this news media. Mitchell Place is at the top of your screen. East Post Road is at the bottom of the screen. At the left is Mamaroneck Avenue. And you can see the parcel begins on Mitchell. It continues in the middle. There's that long thing running left to right, which we understand, Jim, is the parking structure. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's the parking structure.
And then
now there's another building.
Then at the bottom on the left of the screen again is another portion of this.
Yeah, which we saw in the first slide.
Well, there's basically, there's really 3 buildings, 2 apartment structures and the parking structure. That's really the simplest way that I can put it. It's, as I said, without having the actual renderings and pointing out the buildings and the streets and whatnot, it's very hard to convey.
So how many apartments?
How many apartments?
There will be 434 apartments. And this project probably will have one of the most major impacts on the city, because it will, I guess, since they built the building on Mamaroneck Avenue across from CVS, this is the first apartment structure.
That was JPI.
JPI.
Jefferson.
Right. Jefferson. I should know. My son used to live there.
Yes. Well, but this is the first building apartments on Mamaroneck Avenue.
Yeah. Now, the developer is called Alliance, and they are
very large company.
They are a major operator.
Yeah.
They're based in Phoenix, but they have apartment complexes all over the country.
I believe they said they have 92,000 units.
That's a lot of apartments.
Well, they do everything. They manage. They do their construction. It's a very, very large company.
But this is just one thing that was kind of sprung on us at that special council meeting, because there's another major residential project coming on.
You're talking about 440 Hamilton?
Exactly.
Yeah.
440 Hamilton, the former AT&T building, I believe that's going to be...
Let's show the Hamilton. There we go.
Yeah, that's going to be...
That's the current building.
Yeah,
right.
239 apartments. Entergy, I think, still occupies the upper 2 floors of the building, but they're on the tail end of their lease.
Now, there was a rendering of what the new structure would look like, I've seen, and it's rather dramatic. It's glass, it's angular, and it would give an entirely new and different look to that particular prime location in White Plains, right on Hamilton Avenue. But we see now 2 more very active projects, residential projects. If you add it all up, though, do we have a clue as to what's really happening in White Plains?
In fact, we have a slide that shows the amount of apartments coming on board in, say, when, 5 years?
Yeah, I would say that over 5 years you would have that. Now, it's interesting. There is Westchester Avenue, I believe, has been approved, but they haven't started, and that's across from the Westchester, and that's where the Jeep Chrysler dealership is. And then they are going to also put a hotel with that, which is it's not going to be called the Marriott, but it's part of the Marriott.
Marriott has
Marriott
several different brands that they operate under, different brand names for different types of hotels.
Then you have Westmoreland Avenue. I believe it's the 80 units. That should be completed, I would say, within 6 months to a year.
Yeah, that's the former WARC building, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Then there's another proposal for Westmoreland Avenue, which is not yet under construction, and that will include a brewery and
Grocery and apartments.
yeah, and apartments.
And so it's all beginning to add up, and so you really, really wonder, we had a guest on People to Be Heard who said that yes, indeed, many people are moving up to from Manhattan into Westchester to perhaps fill them. So that seems to be, we're ready for them. And now one other thing, the AME Zion Church here, that's the building, is going to build, you told me, Jim, they're going to build senior housing on top of it? They're looking for a zoning change.
Now that's on Leek Street.
That's right.
Yes. I don't know if senior housing, I can't remember the rendering exactly, but they're building 4,000 square feet of, for lack of a better word for it, commercial space, which will be the, some administrative offices for them, and I think some other rooms that the church needs. And I think that the actual apartments, which will be 56 senior citizen affordable housing units, is to the left. It is not. It is not on top of the church.
I see. Okay, so it's on the property somewhere to be determined, basically.
No, it's got it determined.
Okay. Okay, fine. Great. So, and they were requiring a zoning change for that, correct? And then there were, and some other news that sort of is symbolic of some of the problems that we may face is that there was a small fire in White Plains on Mamaroneck Avenue. Here's a shot there. It was a minor fire, and it was put out very quickly because we're just down the street from fire headquarters, and not much damage was done. And
It was an apartment fire, though.
yeah.
Oh,
Well, above, apparently. But that is the yellow notice closing the building, at least this week, until further notice. Then, Peter, there was a major fire in Yonkers, which
Indeed, it was on Monday, and it burned out several businesses in a century-old factory building, which had been repurposed over the years. But fortunately, in that, there were no fatalities or serious injuries. The general alarm fire in the former carpet factory fronting on Neperhan and Lake Avenues in Yonkers was first reported at about 4 a.m. As late as 11 Monday morning, there were still hot spots giving off smoke. Artists' workshops and studios, a theatrical costume company, and woodworking shops were among the many businesses inside the sprawling structure. Yonkers Deputy Fire Chief is Thomas Fitzpatrick.
The first crews encountered a heavy volume of fire on multiple floors. Fire was pushing out several windows on 2 to 3 floors. So that would tell them it had quite a headway before we were notified. So the first due chief notified us of a second and third alarm, and then it subsequently went to a general alarm, which in the city of Yonkers would mean all of our 18 companies will be on the scene eventually, and we'll need to start backfilling companies to protect the rest of the city. The heavy volume on arrival prohibited us from going inside originally. We had to knock it down with the outside water streams, the master streams as we refer to them. We probably didn't get inside for about over 2 hours.
Again, John, fortunately, no injuries, no fatalities. There were a few firemen, we understand, treated for smoke inhalation.
Now, we've come to another feature we've inaugurated now that we have a new president. It's Trump the President. And Peter Katz has been keeping track of the second week of the Trump presidency, and we've also started the Trump shot clock. There are 1,445 days to go in this presidency, just for those of you who like to keep track minute day to day.
You know, John, you can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't.
Just today now, White House aide Kellyanne Conway, who was Trump's campaign manager, has been caught lying again. In an interview with NBC's Chris Matthews, she claimed refugees massacred Americans at Bowling Green, Kentucky in 2011. That was a complete lie. She said the news media covered it up. That's another complete lie, because it never happened. She's making excuses this morning, trying to roll this back and get control over the lies. In another lie in that same interview, she claimed that President Obama had banned Iraqi immigrants. That never happened. you have to wonder why the Trump voters are believing all these lies. There have been some leaks from the White House. You know that raid in Yemen where an American was killed, several civilians were killed, including children. It turns out that according to the leakers in the White House, that operation was not properly vetted for Trump, and instead of approving it, after having formal meetings with various departments and department heads, it was approved by Trump during a dinner.
Really?
Trump told religious leaders at the National Prayer Breakfast that he wants to, quote, totally destroy. That's a quote, totally destroy a 1954 law barring churches and other religious institutions from political activity if they want to keep their tax-exempt status. It's called the Johnson Amendment, and that's been a critical part of the separation of church and state, designed in part to prevent there from being a state religion. He also spoke about his TV ratings on The Apprentice, a nonsensical subject for a national prayer breakfast. Trump proclaimed that he had better ratings than the new host Arnold Schwarzenegger. And that prompted Schwarzenegger, a former governor of California, to send out a tweet saying that they should switch jobs, and then Americans will again be able to sleep in peace. Trump nominated Neil Gorsuch, an arch-conservative, to the Supreme Court on Tuesday to fill the Scalia vacancy at age 49. He's the youngest Supreme Court nominee in a quarter century, so if confirmed, he'll be around for a long time to come. He's on the Denver-based 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. He has ruled in favor of corporations and against workers, and against minority and women's rights, and against the environment. The outrage continued over Trump's travel ban on Muslims, which he claims is not a travel ban on Muslims. In an unprecedented move, about 1,000 State Department workers signed a letter stating that the ban poses a danger to the country by proving to the world what ISIS has been claiming in its propaganda, that the U.S. is waging a crusade against Muslims. In what's being called the Monday Night Massacre, after President Nixon's Saturday Night Massacre, remember when he fired Attorney General Elliot Richardson, who refused to get rid of the Watergate special prosecutor who was looking at Nixon? Well, Trump on January 30th fired acting Attorney General Sally Yates. She had directed the Justice Department lawyers not to defend Trump's executive order on immigration because she felt it was not legal. Dana Bente was named by Trump to take over as acting Attorney General, and a few hours later he rescinded Yates' directive. National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn threatened Iran with something, but the White House wouldn't say what after Iran test-fired a missile. Trump, in response, commented to reporters that everything's on the table. Rex Tillerson, the former president of oil giant ExxonMobil, was sworn in as Secretary of State. Before he was sworn in, he directed a purge of top-level State Department officials. Trump had phone calls with the leaders of two of our allies, Mexico and Australia.
At the time.
He ended up fighting with them. He supposedly hung up on the Australian Prime Minister after only 25 minutes of the call, which had been scheduled to last a full hour. He also had a phone call with Russia's Putin, which we are told did not end up in a fight. Trump's political operatives have taken control of the Voice of America. This is the government's worldwide radio service, which has a decades-long reputation as being the place people around the world, especially in dictatorships, can go to be assured of hearing the truth. Some will say it looks as if Trump wants to rule the world. We have two things we can look at. One is the book, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by author William L. Shirer, which chronicles Hitler's rise to power. There is another book, The Life and Death of Adolf Hitler by Robert Payne. They both show similar things. Analysis shows that Trump, his chief advisor Steve Bannon, and others are following the same patterns and employing the same underlying techniques that Hitler used, including discrediting the news media, using fear, threats, and ridicule to control the legislature, dividing the population, creating targets for the masses to hate, openly lying, well, we saw some of that from Kellyanne Conway, didn't we? Issuing edicts, seeking to expand executive powers, creating their own propaganda apparatus, threatening to use the power of government to stifle dissent, as Trump threatened just the other day against the University of California at Berkeley after it canceled an appearance by an official of the alt-right website Breitbart. Breitbart had been run by Steve Bannon before Bannon hooked up with Trump. Hitler invaded countries to get their national resources. Trump says, let's keep the oil. Hitler had an alliance with dictator Mussolini. Trump wants an alliance with dictator Putin. Hitler had the Jews and Gypsies to blame for Germany's troubles. Trump blames the Muslims and Mexicans for America's. Hitler put his name and the Nazi swastika on billboards and buildings when he invaded. Trump already has his name on buildings around the world. John, you can't make this stuff up.
No, but it's very instructive to read those two books that you mentioned and see how many moves, a little more draconian earlier in Nazi Germany when Hitler took power within his first 3 months, but it's chilling. Now, we'd like to talk about a little People to be Heard that we did this week, and that will be on Saturday night at 8, and People to be Heard will feature Jackie Toplitsky, the billion-dollar broker from Douglas Elliman, and she talks about Latino real estate markets in Westchester County in New York and Miami, and Latinos' opportunities in real estate today. It's very insightful as to how growing the Latino and South American markets are. And of course, she also does mention that realtors in the Westchester area, the whole tri-state area, should look to adding more Latino and Latina staff because they can deal with this new market of first-time persons of Spanish descent looking for homes. And it was a unique interview and dynamic speaker, and I recommend it. And it's also going to be on the internet at www.whiteplainsweek.com.
Yes, and actually on whiteplainsweek.com there is a library of People to be Heard shows covering various subjects that have appeared over time. You can also find, of course, White Plains Week on the internet, and we also have a YouTube channel. A lot of people watch things on YouTube.
We want to recognize that William McMahon, former fire chief, passed away at age 93 this week. He served as the city's fire chief for 9 years and worked to get the passage of state fire sprinkler laws. He died Monday. He was 93. McMahon joined the fire department in 1951, rose through the ranks, became chief in 1977. After his retirement in 1986, he became active in the New York State Association of Fire Chiefs and was its president in 1989. During that time, he worked to promote legislation for fire sprinkler systems in all new construction. John Bailey, Peter Katz, Jim Benerofe, good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.